Hello, this is Uncle Jim, and I'm inspecting and prepping some 10mm brass, and I thought I'd bring you along, especially because I found a few issues, and I love drama and issues. So, what I'm using today is like a range brass, unknown, never seen before, don't know whose gun they used, and this is what I like to do when I'm checking brass for the first time, some range brass. So in this case, I'm trying to look for all the same head stamps on this batch for when my 1911 shows up, and do some test loads with that. So we got the right head stamp. I'm checking for cracks around the rim of the case. I'm checking around the case mouth, and then I'm checking the rim of the case if it's all dinged up from gravel, ejectors, extractors, whatever. Checking for visual, bulge, but this will tell me everything once we do this. So I'm just sizing, decapping, and then I'm going to throw it directly into the gauge here, and it drops free and drops out. Okay, so that's kind of my procedure. Once I know everything's good, don't have to worry about it for a while anyway. And my guns don't bulge, but some guns do. If you got an unsupported 1911, there's a few brands out there that are unsupported, non-ramp barrel. And so I'm just making sure there's no major dings. Now this brass, this has a bunch of little dings here. This brass was really nasty. It sat a long time. It looked pretty bad, but it cleaned up pretty good. And I'm using it in this case for the gun that's coming. And so I checked everything out, every direction, everything, and it fits in the gauge. Now let's see if we can find you a problem child. I got these 50 done, and this is a 6-shooter Texans 40 caliber tray, and you'll notice how tight everything is. I love that. Even though this isn't for 10mm, it works awesome. It's a 40, and I don't own 40s, so thank you, 6-shooter Texan. That 40 tray came out very handy. I like it. It's going to be really easy to drop powder charges in and everything. Okay, this primer is kind of flattened, and that's a telltale. I look for that, and so I'm really going to scrutinize for bulge, anything weird, and we'll see if we can get one to stick. Otherwise, I'll pick one out of this bin here. I have a little bin for rejects and a little poker stick in case it won't, if it gets stuck in the gauge. And there we go. And there we go. We got a sticker. All right. We got a sticker. So now I'm checking for any bulge where the feed ramp would be. And this is the weird anomaly I've been finding with some of this brass is it's bulged all the way around. So that's telling me it's more like a PPC gun or an AR style 10mm where they chamfer the chamber and it'll bulge all the way around, because some of these companies go crazy chamfering the chamber so they'll feed. Maybe I can grab a barrel here. Yeah, all right, let me grab you a barrel. This is a 9mm, so I need a 9. All right. This is all improvised, people. Okay. On AR PPC guns, they usually do this. They'll just chamfer it all the way around. That's why I have suspect on this, and we'll cover that. And so when your brass goes in, sometimes they get really carried away on that because their guns are built like crap, or their barrel, and they don't feed right, and so they'll just chamfer the crap out of that. And that's why I suspect it's bulged all the way around. Just kind of unusual to see some 10 millimeters out there like that already. But there you go. All right, now, if you buy a Foxtrot mics, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But people keep buying these crap AR carbine, pistol caliber carbines. Just buy a Foxtrot mics. All right, so this one is sticking right here. Now we'll go over to some barrels and I'll show you that'll feed just fine. That'll be fine. No need for a bulge buster. But I found, okay, that one's even worse. Look at that. And it's all the way around. There's no section where the feed ramp is exposed. So it almost screams of PPC gun. Let's go to the desk. All right, so we have this case that was bulged and doesn't fit in the gauge. As a matter of fact, it's stuck in there. However, your barrels are the final proving ground. So this round that's stuck in the gauge would still feed in this barrel, no problem. Okay, no problem. Now this is a super tight chamber here, different circumference, everything. And it still fits in this barrel. And this is a very picky barrel on what brass you use in 10 millimeter when you load it with a lead bullet. So there's that. Your final proof ground is always going to be your barrels. Gauges I only use for certain calibers. I really don't need them for anything revolver, because I've never had a revolver round not fit in a cylinder, so there's that. But 10 millimeter I'm more picky about, and it's good to have a gauge for that, for this reason. So, and then you got your support where the feed ramp is. Now, this probably, I don't know what it came out of. I don't know if it was gacking around and still expanded the brass while it was ejecting, or it was a PPC type gun, which is kind of rare in 10 millimeter anyway. But usually you'll see an unsupported area where the feed ramp is, and you'll just have a bulge on one side. This is all the way around, so I thought I'd do a video on that. That's weird. That's very weird. So, non-ramped 1911 barrels, they're going to bulge with hot loads. And same with your older Glocks and other guns that feed really well. They might not have a really good support. Now this tight chamber here is supported all the way around. The feed ramp and everything else is the same where you look at it, where the base of the brass is. Okay, so the newer Glocks aren't bad. Another thing you want to look at is when you have a new barrel or a new gun, it's always good in 10 millimeter, you're shooting a hot round, to after you shoot it, measure the diameter of the brass, how thick it is here, how much it expanded. This chamber expands less than this chamber after it's fired. And so this barrel will probably get a few more rounds of life out of the brass than this barrel. And I'd rather shoot this barrel with super hot loads like Dead Nuts max loads than I would this barrel, because it's going to expand less and you're not going to have as many issues. Not a big deal. 10 millimeter brass expands. Check your barrel just out of curiosity before and after. Take your calipers and measure how thick it is. Okay. In the live chat, Scotsman had a live chat this weekend, and they were asking about the 10 millimeter Magnum versus a 10 millimeter. And here's a 10 millimeter Magnum versus a 10. And you can see there's a big difference in case length, kind of like a 357 versus a 357 Maximum. So, to give you a good idea, 10 millimeter is flush here. So look at that. Now look at this. This is a 10 millimeter Magnum. and that's how much extra you have. Very similar to Maximum in a 357. And I got this round from Timothy, PC Bullet Empire. He sent me this as a memento because I never had a 10 millimeter Magnum, and that's kind of neat. Now, 10 millimeter Magnum was made for like silhouette shooting and hunting in a semi-auto, and it gave you a ton of energy. A 200 grain 10 millimeter Magnum is going over 1600 feet per second, so that's pretty darn good for that heavy of a bullet. You do a light bullet, it's going to scream. So the only problem with that is it never caught on. So you only had a couple guns that were made in 10 millimeter Magnum. Let's see, the AMT Mark IV, what was that gun? AMT, ugliest gun. The AMT Auto Mag, and then the Grizzly, I think. And there were a few custom guns. One looked like a 1911. And at one time, Ruger was thinking about chambering their revolvers in 10 millimeter Magnum, but they never got around to it. Maybe some people have converted their revolvers, but it's just a pain in the butt. You can still get the brass in 10 millimeter Magnum. It's a whopping $158 for Starline for 500 rounds. But what gun are you going to use? It's just more practical 10. Okay, I left out a few things before we go. On the 10 millimeter Magnum, it's actually beefier than a 10 millimeter. It has more brass at the base of the case. But what they could have done to make it even better is a lot of brass kind of cups down and it's a little bit thicker in this area. They could have thickened that up for feed ramps and bulging under high pressure, but I've never shot an AMT, so I don't know if it bulged the brass or not. I had one in 10 millimeter, a Javelina 7-inch, and that thing worked awesome. Actually, it would have been a perfect pistol for the 10 millimeter Magnum because it had so much weight out front. It was a 7-inch long slide 1911. It would need a bigger mag well for 10 mag, but it would have worked great. It had so much beef up there. As a matter of fact, they used a regular recoil spring from a 1911. So under the barrel on the slide there was just all solid mass steel. And you just put the recoil spring right behind it. And you didn't need a special recoil spring. And that thing shot like a 9 millimeter with the hottest loads you could put in it. I should have kept that gun. Anyway. Now let's talk bulge busters. I'm not a big fan because you're stressing the brass wherever it bulged and you're resizing it with the bulge buster. However, if you only have to do it once and your other guns don't bulge brass, you're fine. But if you do it more than once, you're just asking for it. It's a weak spot on the brass. Think about that little submarine that exploded at the bottom of the ocean. Okay, you're looking at the same thing. So I wouldn't do that. But Midway does have the bulge busters on sale. They're for $45, $10, and $40. It comes as a kit with all those bushings in there. And it's pretty easy to do. Now, I didn't have a bulge buster. And last night I had a wild hair to bust a bulge. So I'm not going to tell you what I did, but this round right here was worse than this round. It wouldn't even go in this far. It was bad. And so I took that round, I figured it's a throwaway anyway, and did my homemade modification bulge buster, and look at this. Perfect. And I didn't have to buy anything, and it's something you already have. Maybe you guys can figure that one out. Would I do more than 5 at a time? No, it's a pain in the ass. Get the bulge buster. It's cheap on sale right now. But it was a fun experiment, and it worked perfectly. So there's that. The test facility at Uncle Jim's. Had to try it, and it worked. All right. I guess that's it. Oh, no, magazines. If you got a 1911 and 10 millimeter, sometimes you can get away with 45 mag. This is an old Colt mag that I don't use. It's kind of got a rounded follower on top, and it fits the 10 millimeter. You can load them, and you got enough room so they fit without dragging, and sometimes you can get away with that. And you can also tweak the feed lips if you want them dedicated and you want to be cheap and you're not using this mag anyway, like I'm going to do. And we'll see if that works. In the future, my gun hasn't showed up yet. So PSA had the Rock Island for $3.99, fully enhanced, everything on it. What are you going to do? So I called the pawn shop locally that's doing the FFL for me, and he said, I haven't gotten anything from PSA yet, so they're a little slow on delivery. He said, just give me an hour after you got notification that it was delivered, and I'll have it all ready for you, and he's a great guy, so we'll look forward to that. The other thing is, I was talking to Full Lead Taco yesterday on the phone, and he said, it turns out he has the same identical pistol I just ordered. He bought it off his buddy because he liked it so much, and he said that thing feeds everything. It feeds stuff the other guns don't feed, and it's got a really steep feed ramp on it. It's fully supported. And the feed ramp on that thing is really like a wall. But he said that thing feeds everything. So I hope I have the Full Lead Taco luck with mine and I don't get a lemon or anything. So that kind of made me feel a little less leery because I've never had a Rock Island 1911. And as a side note, I'm using brass. I don't know. Today in the video, and that's why we scrutinized it. I do have brass when I had a bunch of 10 millimeters, and I have once fired, twice fired. I've never had a problem with it like I am running into with this kind of brass. So I decided to try this brass, and we had a few issues, but that's how you find out. I got a whole jar of that stuff, and so stay tuned for the next videos. Until next time, I hope I didn't bore the crap out of you. Thanks for watching.